Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
7 above 0 in Hornell, and we have on the line with us right now State Senator Tom O'Meara on our live line. Thank you for joining us, Senator.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Good morning to you and all your listeners. Another chilly morning.
Yes, it is. Very icy around here, too, by the way. Senator O'Meara, there was a story that broke over the weekend, and I want to make sure I'm explaining it right to our listeners in the news. From what I understand, you went to the State Board of Elections, asked a question, and got permission from them to use campaign money in order to take some legal action against a state panel. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, myself and other legislators have been considering bringing legal action against aspects of the compensation committee that dealt with the pay raise for the legislature this year. Legal action is expensive. I had reviewed prior opinions of the State Board of Elections. Nothing was strictly on point as far as using campaign funds for litigation of this type, but the law is clear that you can use your funds for anything that's related to the holding of office. This pay commission report certainly directly impacts the holding of office. It changes, I believe, beyond the authority of what was granted to the committee to look at increasing salaries only. They came to the determination and ruled that you cannot have outside income beyond what would be about $18,000 a year right now, and none of that income, even that $18,000, could be earned in a fiduciary capacity. That being working as an attorney, working as a real estate agent, an insurance broker, a stockbroker. He couldn't even be an executor of a family member's estate and collect a commission on it for any dollars, not even that limited $18,000. The legislature has always been a part-time legislature. I believe it should be a part-time legislature, that we should be having individuals that work in the real world, and not just the professionals of the type that I just listed, but also small business owners. If you owned a business, you can't continue operating that business making more than $18,000 a year. That's really going to be a chilling effect on real working people in the state from pursuing elected office, and that will detrimentally affect the makeup of the legislature. We really need real world working people on there that know the impacts of what this legislation that's passed has on individuals, on workers in the real world. Further, the pay commission went and said the raise they authorized is going to be phased in over 3 years. The next two steps of the raise don't take place if the legislature doesn't pass the governor's budget on time. That it sounds like extortion to me, to hold up the entire legislature, saying, if you don't do my budget on time, you're not going to get this raise. That's totally inappropriate influence on the legislature. And the pay commission went further to affect the structure of the legislature by removing all of the stipends that were there for leadership positions in the legislature that the legislature had passed pursuant to law, for committee assignment positions, for leadership positions, and that impacts the structure and leadership and operation of each house of the legislature. And we have separation of powers in this country, that the legislature should be able to make its own laws and rules into how its houses operate, and the executive should stay out of this. So I requested the opinion to make sure that it was okay to use these funds because litigation is expensive. And then I, myself, and others in the legislature are seriously considering bringing legal action against aspects of this pay raise.
Looking at the Albany Times Union website, it says a legal challenge to the committee's work. And talking about that compensation panel, a legal challenge to the committee's work is already underway in a state Supreme Court. Talking with State Senator Tom O'Mara. Senator, if this goes into effect gradually, would you gradually have to step back from your work at that law firm in, is it Elmira, Barclay and Damon?
I am in the Elmira office of the Barclay Damon law firm, doing the same legal work that I've done for the past 25 years, 30 years, and continue to practice law on a part-time basis and earn outside income. And one of the things that this panel did, we just ran for re-election last November. Under the terms and the rules that outside income was appropriate and allowable. And this panel, well, that aspect of it, the outside income, doesn't phase in this year. It phases in next January, where you have to eliminate that outside income. And that's in the middle of a term. So, voters that elected me to a 2-year term, and I can tell you that every opponent that I've had throughout my career in the legislature, both in the Assembly and the Senate, has raised the issue of outside income, and that I'm a lawyer and I work in a law firm, and voters continue to elect me regardless of that. It has no influence or bearing on the work I do as a legislator, and that shouldn't be something that's going to be used to keep individuals from serving in the legislature.
Senator O'Mara, do you mind if we move on to other topics like Senator Kruger's legislation that passed last week, the RHA, the Reproductive Health Act?
Right.
Well, if you go to Senator Kruger's website on this, it talks about the RHA, and it says it's a very personal, complex decision, and she talks it up and says a lot of let's see, let's see. Our abortion laws, talking about New York State, once groundbreaking, are now almost 50 years old. They do not meet the standards set by Roe v. Wade, and they do not reflect the modern medical practice. We will never know how many New York women have suffered and even died because of outdated laws preventing them from getting the care that they desperately needed. Now, that's not what we heard from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano last week. Palmisano talked about these new laws, this new legislation that was passed by the governor, as a pretty dangerous thing to women because no longer do they need 2 doctors to help perform an abortion. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, this legislation is an abomination on humankind. Frankly, it has nothing to do with protecting a woman's right to an abortion that has been established by the U.S. Supreme Court from Roe v. Wade through a progeny of other cases throughout the last 4 decades. Women in New York have been afforded that right under U.S. law since Roe versus Wade, and that has been expanded since Roe versus Wade. This legislation is an expansion of the ability to get an abortion, the ability to get a late-term abortion after a fetus is viable, that being that it can live outside the womb because of issues, subjective issues concerning the health of the mother, not just the life of the mother, not a decision of life or death of the mother, a decision of health, and that can include mental health. It can include concerns and worries over financial concerns of having another child, And with the healthcare provider, that woman can choose to have an abortion right up to the final moments. To be honest with you, and it's outrageous in my opinion.
Talking to State Senator Tom O'Mara on the Newsmaker show this morning. Senator O'Mara, marijuana. Now, you supported medical marijuana, but this movement of legalizing marijuana in New York State was something you're opposed to. What can you tell us there?
Well, the governor's going full steam ahead on this. He points to his health commissioner who came out with a study at the governor's request to show that the benefits of marijuana outweigh the risks and the negatives. Now, they haven't outlined what those benefits are. I think the only benefit that there will be from this will be increased tax revenue for the state to further throw around. It's all a money grab. I think that calling something recreational marijuana is ridiculous. There's nothing recreational about it. It's not like playing a pickup basketball game or something, or a softball game. You don't say that you're having a recreational drink of liquor. It's a drug, and it's going to be it's going to cause and create a lot of issues going forward, particularly in regard to the operation of a motor vehicle or individuals doing their jobs on a daily basis, because there's no way to accurately measure the intoxication level at the time from having smoked or ingested marijuana. There just isn't a breathalyzer system like we have for alcohol out there. Nobody's developed one so far.
Talking to State Senator Tom O'Mara. Going to take a quick break, then check the forecast. We'll be back in just a moment.
McCourt's Auto Collision on State Route 36 just south of Canastillo is a full-service collision shop offering not just collision work, but also paint work. McCourt's has a 24-foot frame straightener with 3-dimensional measurement. McCourt's accepts all insurance companies and can work with you on any deductible you may have. At McCourt's, they work for your interest and your benefit, not the insurance companies. All work is fully warranted and they offer a free loaner car. McCourt's Auto Collision, State Route 36 in Canastillo, where customer satisfaction is always number one. Phone 607-698-9900.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carroll. Rob, is it going to get any warmer this week?
Well, a little bit, Brian, tomorrow, and then forget about it from Wednesday through Friday. It gets really, really cold. We've got an impressively cold air mass that's going to drop into the Dakotas and Minnesota and Wisconsin. Next 24 hours, they could be as cold as 40 below out there. And I'm not talking about the wind chill. That's the air temperature. There's a little town up in central Canada this morning, Armstrong. They're reporting 50 below as their current low temperature. Now, the lucky thing for us is the worst of the cold is going to be in the Central Plains. By the time the air mass gets here Wednesday, it will have modified a bit, and that's going to save us. But we're still going to be very chilly Wednesday through Friday. Today, well, we're going to notice an increase in the cloudiness, Brian. It's breezy, 25 to 30. Sunrise this morning was at 7:27. The sun will set tonight at 5:20. Cloudy, breezy tonight. A little bit of light snow will develop, 25. Low pressure passing north of the region tomorrow will produce a little light snow. It's breezy. Temperatures 30 to 35. Between tonight and tomorrow, we could pick up about an inch or two. Tomorrow night, the snow will end. Lows will drop to 0 to 5 above. And then clouds and sun, breezy, bitterly cold Wednesday with the chance of a flurry or two. Highs on Wednesday, Brian, 5 above 0.
Thank you, Rob. Now back with State Senator Tom O'Mara. Senator O'Mara reading from the Times-Union website. An article here about the SAFE Act. It says the first major batch of gun control measures since the passage of the SAFE Act 6 years ago are scheduled for a vote in both houses of the state legislature this week. The legislation would enable New Yorkers to seek a court order to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people, ban bump stocks, prohibit teachers from being armed in schools, impose storage regulations, provide funding for gun buyback programs, extend the period for completing background checks and criminalize the sale and possession of guns that are undetectable by metal detectors. Your thoughts, Senator O'Meara?
It's just a continued onslaught by the Democrats in Albany against our Second Amendment rights in this state. New York leads the way on gun control already, and they continue to push through these infringements upon an individual's right to access, to purchase, and to own a firearm. It is very dangerous infringement on our individual rights at this point, and those bills will be going through committees within the state legislature this morning, and I'm not sure if they're going to come up for debate on the floor today or tomorrow, but I'm quite certain they're going to be voted on this week. And with Democrat control of both houses of the legislature now, we've witnessed an onslaught of extreme liberal agenda for the past 3 weeks in Albany with the legislation that's rolling through. Honestly, the floodgates are open. They're unimpeded for the Democrats to impose their will on all of us across upstate New York. And it's very concerning to me, the rapid speed at which they are undertaking to enact all of these types of bills that we talked about this morning, and others. Last week they did free tuition for illegal immigrants, called the DREAM Act. It's just one thing after another that is totally changing the values for what we stand for in the Republican Party, and I think most people across at least upstate New York.
Now, there's another piece of legislation called the Child Victims Act, which they say is up for a vote this week in the New York State Legislature. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Senator O'Meara, because I remember it was 2 or 3 months ago, State Senator Kathy Young was trying to get her own version passed. And Senator Young went up against, was getting some pretty heavy pushback from some attorney-backed organizations that did not like her legislation. No insult to attorneys there. Senator O'Meara is one himself. But there were some legal groups that did not like her legislation. I wanted to get your thoughts and input on the Child Victims Act and the legislation that Senator Young originally pushed for that did not go through.
Yeah, well, what the Child Victim Act does, the whole hang-up with this legislation, nobody supports protecting pedophiles or those that have sexually abused somebody else. What this legislation does is it offers a look back to, forever. It could be 40, 50 years ago. An individual wants to bring a claim against an individual, and that claim can also be brought against the organization that perpetrator may have worked for. Now, my concern with the legislation has been, first of all, it's going to be a trial lawyer's dream to be able to bring all these cases and hold up organizations like the Catholic Church, like the Boy Scouts of America, perhaps your local school district where a teacher molested a child. And in cases where the individual perpetrated these crimes, that's fine. The look back is fine. Go back against that individual. But going back that far against the institution itself concerns me, because that's the deep pocket. That's what the trial lawyers will go after. And I don't think there's a high enough standard in this legislation of what the culpability of that institution or employer has to be held liable to cover the damages for the individual perpetrator. So that's been my hang up with it over the years, but that's the way it's going to go through, and I think we'll see a flood of litigation coming from trial lawyers trying to make a few bucks.
Senator O'Mara, yeah, on that topic, the obvious thing there is that, anybody could make a false accusation against a dead teacher, a dead priest or minister, you name it, and how do you prove it, and how do you prove that a dead person did not do something? That, I think, has been the big concern about people who were opposed to this legislation. I remember that there was an organization, and I can't remember the name of the group offhand, but they said they were going to follow Senator Young around her district and go to every public event and try to say that Senator Young was trying to protect child molesters, which I thought was a big stretch, just because she didn't support a certain legislation. I'm wondering, will these groups be satisfied with the Child Victims Act getting passed? It seemed that those groups were more in favor of the Child's Victim Act.
No, I think the groups are in favor of the legislation that is going to be passed by the legislature this week. So I don't think there's anybody pushing for more at this point. We have in recent years eliminated statutes of limitations of these crimes, so that those aren't a factor anymore. This is really just dealing with civil litigation and looking back to these incidents that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. And there's a reason we have statute of limitations, and that's because witnesses' memories fade, evidence is harder to come by, and that's not just to be able to prosecute or bring a claim, but just as importantly in a justice system that we have is the ability of an individual to be able to defend themselves and to be able to come up with reliable evidence to exonerate themselves if that's the case.
Senator O'Mara, out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us live today.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure, Brian.
AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.